Developing story that we have for you this afternoon. In a letter seen by eNCA, the NPA says a decision to prosecute those accused in the second docket, namely those who were in the house at the time of the murder of football star Senzo Meyiwa, will be made after the current trial has concluded. Slindile Masigan has been tracking these developments for us. We're, after all, 1 week before the trial resumes. That's on the 5th of September. That's next week, Monday. Slindile, good afternoon. Welcome again to today. Tell us exactly what is contained in this NPA letter, in this latest development.
So, of course, in this letter, which is dated around the 26th of August, which would have been last week, this letter basically says that the NDPP has made amendments to the directives in terms of the Senzo Meyiwa murder trial. These directives, in fact, pertain to docket 375, which we know is the second docket which investigated the circumstances around the death of Senzo Meyiwa. We know that in this docket there are no robbers. In fact, those in the house are the ones who are accused of having a case to answer to. Someone in that house is said to have been the one to pull the trigger and ultimately ending Senzo Meyiwa's life. And then the letter further goes on to say that the jurisdiction of docket 375 now moves from Johannesburg to Pretoria, and that the DPP of the Pretoria division, that's the North Gauteng High Court, will then be the one mandated to make a decision. If I can just quote that letter directly, Broddan, it says that in light of the fact that the decision in Vosllerus case 375 depends on the credibility findings by the trial court in the current trial involving Vosllerus case 636, I have therefore decided that the decision in Vosllerus case 375 will be made at the conclusion of the current trial. So basically, whether or not Kelly Khumalo and those who were in the house will be prosecuted ultimately depends on what happens with this particular trial.
Pretoria will decide that at the right time.
Yeah.
So when this trial resumes next Monday, we can't be asking you when is Kelly Khumalo going to appear in court, because there was a lot of interest, but you have spoken to her lawyer. What is her lawyer saying? Because
it directly affects her, of course, and those who were in the house in terms of docket 375. If ultimately a decision is made with this particular trial that finds these 5 men accused, then there's a possibility that the NPA could turn around and say, okay, we want to prosecute in terms of docket 375 and the allegations being made there. So Kelly Khumalo's lawyer says at this point she maintains her client's position in terms of her wanting her day in court, and saying that the NPA needs to actually call those who were in the house to come and testify as soon as possible. Let's take a listen.
The state needs to call the eyewitnesses with immediate effect, because the structure of the state's outline of the case to go to the investigation and then to go to the witnesses, almost, it's broadcast live. So for me, I would say that it is correct. If there are any flaws in the 636 docket, it is within the state's prerogative to then entertain or look at the strength of the 375, of which, Slee, I don't know if you've seen it, it's really not something that has got bearable consequences.
So basically, everybody's going to have to wait until this trial is over before we know whether or not docket 375, or the so-called second docket, where it's mentioning the individuals who were in the house at the time of the shooting of Senzo Meyiwa, whether or not they'll be called to stand trial, what's going to happen, and the Pretoria High Court will decide. But is this usual, Slindile? I'm thinking, if you've got people who are implicated in one murder case, there's one person who died, Senzo Meyiwa in this case, whoever was present and anybody else who's being accused, like the accused numbers 1 to 5, everybody should be involved. But is this usual? What do the legal experts say, that there's this separation?
I mean, it's already kind of strange from what legal experts are saying, that we would have two completely different dockets that say two completely different scenarios. I mean, if you go through both of them, you can tell that these are two complete different pictures as to what actually happened on that fateful evening. And I think we know that it always comes down to the NPA deciding on whether they believe a case is prosecutable, whether they'll have a successful prosecution. And it seems as though they believe that docket 636 is the one that has, you know, credible evidence against the 5 men who are accused. In terms of this particular decision not to wait for a conclusion in this particular trial, one legal expert I spoke to said that it seems the NPA may be actually shooting themselves in the foot instead of actually combining these two dockets and have everyone basically plead their case. Let's take a listen.
It is prejudicial to the state to have 2 separate trials. And the reason why it's prejudicial is you have all your witnesses in both cases testifying for a second time. So you can imagine you have, as an advocate or attorney representing the accused, would have a field day with the evidence tendered by your witnesses during the first trial, because that evidence is allowed in the second trial. So I can confront, if Silendelo is the key witness for the state in the first matter, then I can get the transcript of your evidence and I can confront you with that evidence in the second trial. So it's never advisable to do it, but the state has now done it. And unfortunately, they've now made their beds and they have to sleep in it.
Yeah, I wonder what the families of the accused numbers 1 to 4, for example, would think. And we also know that accused number 5 has got a different attorney, and there's been a lot of drama around accused number 1 to 4, because they were represented initially in this trial by advocate Malisela Tifu, and then there was drama when he walked out of court. He was thrown out of court. Then he came back, claiming he can come back, writing letters left, right, and center. Now, this matter has got this new development. We understand from the NPA's perspective, we are not touching docket 375 until this current trial, based on docket 636, is done and dusted. Then we'll see. But what are the families of accused 1 to 4 think?
I mean, you can imagine it's quite concerning because, Bradan, we don't know when this trial is going to conclude. And at this pace, it could take years from what experts are telling us. They are saying that the speed at which this trial is going means that it's going to drag on for some time, especially because we have these stop-starts kinds of situations. And of course, for accused 1 to 4 in particular, especially with the withdrawal of advocate Malisela Tifu, their hopes now depend on what TT Tobane can do in terms of exonerating their clients. But they're saying that they are finding issues with the fact that Tifu seemingly doesn't want to let go of this case, and they've said that they're hoping that moving forward, Tobane will be able to assist their family.
I know you
members.
always try to get hold of the Meyiwa family. You've spoken to Sfiso Meyiwa, and he has insisted all along that docket 375 for him is the docket. What else has he told you?
Yes, so we had an opportunity to speak to him this morning, Brad Dan. Of course, we know he's maintained throughout this entire process that these men in the dock are being framed, that there's a cover-up taking place, and that in fact the real scenario of what really happened is contained in docket 375. I spoke to him just to get his thoughts around how he feels about this latest letter, the developments around it. Let's take a listen.
I don't think it's going to have a but man, in the job, I'm sure that I'm being off from the Nala Dogot. So, and how come it does a born up in
Okay, I can.
One more question. Hearing the views, what's happening next? Monday, the trial resumes. What do we expect?
The trial resumes, Bradan. We know that we're in the middle of cross-examination of the state's first witness, Sergeant Thabo Musia, the forensic investigator. So we're expecting Zandile Mshulolo for accused number 5 to resume with that cross-examination. Thank
you very much, Lindelo Masigane. That's going to be taking place, of course, in court in the Senzo Meyiwa murder trial.